Welcome to episode number 159 of the Effortless Swimming Podcast. My guest today is Shawn Muise, and Shawn is an Ironman triathlete based out of Nova Scotia in Canada. And Shawn and I have been in contact over Instagram over the last couple of months because Shawn, a year ago, he started to make some changes to his stroke. And in the course of the last year, he's effectively gone from a 220 to 225 per 100 pace down to a 131 per 100. In this episode, we're going to talk about how he's done that, what changes he's made to his stroke, and how you might be able to incorporate some of these changes to your own stroke to swim faster. So let's get into the episode with Shawn Muise. So Shawn, welcome to the podcast. We've been in touch just over Instagram because you were telling me about some pretty impressive changes and improvements that you've made to your swimming over the course of the last few months. Do you want to give everyone listening just a quick, a quick breakdown on where you were in terms of your pace and where you're currently at now?
Sure. So again, thanks for having me here. At the start of last summer, getting ready for Ironman Mont Tremblant, I was generally like in the 220, 230 on some of the longer swims per 100. And sometimes I felt absolutely gassed when I hit the shore. I've worked on that all summer, that, the endurance part of it came, but the pace never come around at all. And the harder I tried, I guess, the slower I'd go. It's not like running. You put more energy in and you see speed, but swimming was just totally the opposite. And it was so frustrating for me. But that one video that you had shared on Instagram when I saw it was the turning point. I mean, it's changed everything. And it was a few simple things like the entry of the hand, the fingers pointing down, the high elbow catch, and maybe not reaching out as far. So the stroke cadence increased a lot, and it did a whole bunch of things. It allowed me to exhale all the air out, which was key because I needed all the air back in. And it's really made it's changed everything. So I focused on that. I didn't try anything with the feet, legs. Actually, I was dragging them along and probably creating way more drag, but I focused on that catch. And by the time I got to Tremblant, I had gone from basically a 225 swimmer to 205 for the iron distance. And it was the first year in 5 years there that I felt confident on the shores of that lake, getting into the water with 3,000 people.
And that's so what was it advice that you'd heard before that you were overreaching and stretching out too far, or was it just what you thought you should do and then you obviously made that change and improve it? Where did that original technique come from?
I had heard from a friend of mine. He's a very good swimmer. I mean, he's a sub 1 hour iron distance swimmer, and he kept telling me reach, and it worked for him. But he also saw this video of yours at the same time, and he tried it, and he gained 2-3 seconds, which for him was a lot at a 130 pace to gain a couple seconds. So the next morning in the lake, I tried it, and it just felt so comfortable. And with those fingers pointing slightly down on entry, it automatically made the catch. It would start the catch for you because your hand was down, and it would kind of pull back instantly. So, it changed. And then by increasing the cadence, it times my breath with when I need the air, not when my stroke was telling me I needed air. Because often I'd be trying to take a breath of air underwater, or everything was wrong with what I was trying to do. But that started it all, and then the rest of your videos during the year I've tweaked the little things, and now, I mean, I swam a 131 pace this morning.
Yeah, I saw that one of your posts in the last few weeks. Yeah, looks like you do like a 750 meter swim, and you've been bringing that pace down to a 131, which is it's not an Ironman distance swim, but that pace, a 131, I think most people would be pretty happy with being able to get down to that, and that is such a significant change from where you were. And I mean, with increasing your stroke rate and not going for too much of a reach, it's counterintuitive. You would think that with a slower stroke rate and a longer stroke, it would be easier. And in some cases, yeah, that's true. But just by keeping your momentum going and keeping your speed a little bit more constant, that is why it can become so much easier, because it is common to see people just reach out and glide, and there's too much of a dead spot, too much of a pause in their stroke. Do you think that's what was happening with you?
That's exactly what was happening. Besides the fact that my elbow would sometimes lead in the water first before my hand, it was that sloppy. But trying to that long pause, there was like a dead spot in the stroke, and really just all drag, or it wasn't working. So now I've tried that higher cadence, and I've got it as high as 40 at some point. Now, it only got me so far. I've changed a few things, and now it's around 34, 35 at best. But my stroke, I was finishing like before my hip, and on the recovery of the next part of the stroke when I needed air, that hand was staying in the water by my hip, creating a little more drag. So I've lengthened the part of the stroke where I go past my hip now, and that hand never stops. So I don't have that drag dead spot. And that was like 7-8 seconds right away when I stopped doing that. So every little thing you talk about, I see instant feedback, which is fantastic, because now I try to mimic everything every day. But I have so many things to think of while I'm swimming that I struggle sometimes doing it all right. So I hope it become automatic someday.
Yeah, that's awesome. And in regards to the stroke rate, so you've gotten it up to 40, which would be the equivalent of 80. So we're talking 40 in terms of that's sort of two strokes. So
yes,
and bringing it back down to 34, 35, without having seen you swim, that's probably around the sweet spot for you, being around 70 strokes per minute. Because if you're going at 80, look, there's not a lot of swimmers that I know that can sustain 80 comfortably. So you might find that a stroke rate of 70 strokes a minute or 35, and then going to work on the catch and a couple of other things along with that would be your time best spent, rather than just trying to continually increase it, which it sounds like you're not doing that. But instead of just trying to go for the faster stroke rate, a lot of times, especially if you're swimming with a wetsuit on, it's about basically a better catch, better rhythm in the water, and finding that sweet spot, which it sounds like you've probably found. And like, let's say, how long ago was it? A year ago, where you sort of first started to make some changes?
it was maybe like 2.5 weeks before Mont Tremblant, which was I think August 21st last year. Like I was still quite panicked for this. I mean, I've done this race before, and I knew, okay, it is what it is. Just get through the swim, get me on the bike as fast as I can, and move on. But seeing that small gain last year, and then I wasn't tired was the thing. Like I could swim 3.5K, and I would get out of the water. It was like I hadn't even been in. So that was huge. I mean, I come out of the water last year with a big smile. Usually I come out of the water in hard shape.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love hearing that, and it makes an Ironman event so much better to do. I was the opposite when I did Ironman. I was big smile through the swim, and then it pretty quickly turned into a frown the entire way through. But that's awesome to hear. And thinking back to a year ago, did you ever think that you'd be able to get down to a 130 pace? Did you know what that would look like or feel like in your swimming?
No, it's quite hard to believe, really. And I've had some of my friends say, I always knew you could swim better, but I really didn't see this coming. and that's an understatement. Like I was striving for 2 minutes per 100. And when I reached that last year after Tremblant, I focused on everything. I'd been watching your videos, and it focused on all that. And then, of course, our lakes get too cold to swim in with no pool. I reached that point. 155 was quite comfy for 1,500 meters. This year, I knew I was in decent shape when I got in the water about 10th of June for our lakes warm up enough. I was 205 right out the gate. So I said, okay, it's still there. I haven't lost everything. Now let's work on endurance and keeping that 2 minute. I was just focused on 2 minutes. It wasn't long. I could swim 2K at 2 minute pace within 5 or 6 swims. But what by watching all your stuff here, what's changed to get that extra was now I've trying to kick, but not hard so I don't blow up. But two beat kick, but timing it with the stroke that it automatically rolls into the next stroke. And it almost gave me 25 seconds per 100. Because if you see my Strava files, I went from like 155 to 131 pace overnight. And I haven't swam, well, I don't think I've swam under or over 135 in the last 3 weeks.
And what were you doing before with your kick?
Nothing, just dragging them along, which would keep them, you know, they were probably not above the surface hardly ever. And it was just, I was basically focusing on this catch and feeling the water and, you know, proper pull. So I said, okay, I feel confident with that. We're going to try to kick. And I've added that in it, and my heels are always above water. Now my kick doesn't drive me forward, but at least there's no more drag. And if I can get that timing right, that I roll into each stroke, because most of my friends that have watched me swim say I swim pretty flat. I don't rotate enough. That kick, if it's timed just right, rotates me in each stroke. And I find of course, your head comes out of water at the right time to breathe. So that alone gave me another 20, 25 seconds per 100 instantly.
How do you time your kick with the rest of your stroke? Are you just going by feel, or have you got a cue in your mind?
Yeah, it's a lot of, that's the part, one of the things that I have to remember the most. Like, I really have to concentrate on that part of it. So that's another reason why I kind of left that aspect alone until I got the catch to where I thought that part was automatic. And so I'm still playing with this kick. This morning I said, I'm going to sprint all I can. So, and I left in the first 500 meters, according to the file, was at 122 pace. But the next 500 meters was at 140 pace. So I blew up.
Yeah.
I couldn't keep it up. But, you know, the potential is there to swim well. And I'm not looking for a 130 pace next Ironman, but if I could be comfy at 145, I would be thrilled.
Yeah, that'd be a huge improvement. So, and then so in terms, there's a lot to sort of think about there. And you said you've tried a lot of different things. Once you found the things that worked for you, did you just focus on those, or were you still experimenting? Because I'm curious as to what are you thinking about when you're swimming, and how's that changed over the last year?
Well, I didn't dare try anything too different on that catch part, because that seemed to work. And now with the timing of the breath with the stroke and having all the air out of your lungs and getting all new air in at the right time was big. Because before, like, I felt like I had to breathe when the stroke told me to breathe, not when I really needed the air, or I would force that last little bit out. Now like the stroke rate and the breath seems to work together. So I feel like I can sprint and not get tired. And before, that wasn't the case. So swimming doesn't tire me anymore. But I don't want to mess around with anything I've learned on that part yet until someone tells me different. Like, or if you saw a video of myself, I feel like the most improving I need to do is on the back end, like proper kick and not kick so hard that I tire my legs out, but to get that roll, the right rotation, which I just saw a video of yours an hour ago on that proper rotation, which would get your head out of the water at the right time for the air.
And I think with the kick, it's because there's so much nuance to everything in swimming technique related, is that the same thing with like the reach. Like, you don't want to be really short with it, but you don't want to be too long with it either. There's so much nuance to it. And I think getting the kick to coordinate with the rest of the stroke can be one of the harder things for people to do. And for me, I think it's one of the harder things to teach. It really has to be just sort of, you kind of have to figure it out when you're swimming. And I think a lot of it tends to come down to just feeling for that timing. But I think one of the reasons that you probably had such a big improvement there when you got your kick sorted was, well, number one, your legs may have not been dragging as much, which is obviously a big change. But the other thing too is, if your legs are just sort of moving along and there's nothing happening there's no kick whatsoever, then it's really just your upper body working independently of the rest of your body. And
right.
once you get even just like a small kick, it's that little bit of a downwards kick that you get this transfer of energy that goes through your legs, through to your hip, and then your core. And then you can kind of brace yourself against your catch. You've kind of got something to anchor against or pull against. And that's what is sort of called swimming from the inside out. Like everything's got to start from the hips and the core and move out to the extremities, because if there's no sort of tautness to that, then everything's just kind of going, or working independently. Whereas when you get that kick, that's what gives you that stability through the rest of the body. So I'm amazed how much that did improve your speed. But it, probably when if you had saw a video of it from what you were doing to what you're doing now, you'd probably see just a much more rhythmic stroke, I imagine.
Definitely. It seems to be symmetrical. Both arms are doing the equal amount of work, which before it wasn't the case. Left side was always dead. Now that, like I said, just timing that kick, and I'm so untrained in swimming, I don't know if I have what beat kick I really have, but I know I time it that it fits with the arm when it enters the water and it rotates me into the next stroke. And I think I watched something a while back that you drive that hip forward a little bit and that rolls you into the stroke as well. So again, with the fingers pointing down, the high elbow in the water, all that, I mean, everything's come together. Your videos are helpful for all my friends, and some of them are fantastic swimmers, because what they've noticed is when we found you, you'll stop the video, you'll draw a line from the elbow to the wrist to the hand, and for a non-swimmer like myself, it just made sense. It really worked.
I appreciate that. And I try and keep it as simple as possible and try and avoid too much jargon when we're explaining things, because if I hear someone explaining something about swimming, like I've had coaches where I've had to sort of stop and go, all right, what does that actually sort of mean? I've had to sort of break it down. I think, man, if I can't understand it, I've been swimming since I was 5, then it's probably going to be too complicated for someone who's only been swimming for a couple of years and who doesn't necessarily live and breathe it. So no, I appreciate that. And I just want to also give credit to you, because this stuff doesn't just happen on its own. You've obviously got to put the work in. But I also want you to just talk about your swim training and how, look, you can't swim year round. So just a little bit of background on what your general swimming would look like for a year.
For me, like I said, by the time our lakes are warm enough, it's generally about June 10th. And unfortunately, by October 1st, I need to put the wetsuit away. Then my busy season for my work will start. I may not get a chance to get in the pool on a normal year before February. So I'd swim, a little bit February and March, maybe a dozen, 15 swims in those months. April and May is no swimming, no training of any kind, no biking. June 1st, our lobster season is closed. So I start full on Ironman training, and I have 10 weeks to get ready for an Ironman, which is not easy to do, and things have to go right. So, the bike and the run is not as complicated to me as swimming was. So it was always the anxious part. But like say last year, I've never felt so calm standing on the shores of that lake while they're playing the national anthem in my life. And it was like, I'm going for a swim. Like, I'm going to have fun today.
That's awesome. And when you can finally put all of that practice into put all of that into practice at the next race, maybe it'd be next year, or it will be next year, I'm sure of that. It'd be great to see what you can get that swim speed down to, because it's been a huge change in the course for years. So thank you for coming on and sharing this. I thought it'd be worthwhile just share your experience, because I'm sure there's a lot of other people who can learn from it. And thank you very much for your time, and all the best for the next little while.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.